Mega Man.
Hello and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Mega Man 4 for the Game Boy. That's the Roman numeral 4 because it's on the Game Boy. I guess the stuff that's up front here, I'm going to assume you've been following along with the series now. This is the 4th Game Boy Mega Man. You probably didn't start here, and if you're trying to, you better know something about Mega Man when you're doing so. That's all I'm really going to say on that. And that I've reviewed, the 6 NES ones and the 3 previous Game Boy ones, so you have options for figuring this stuff out, even through this channel that you're watching. But maybe you don't want to watch this channel, so you could go to a written review. You can do it before this or after this or even instead of this by going to hubworldhq.com or just clicking the link in the description. Holy shit, that train came out of nowhere. Which brings me to another thing. Obviously there's some background noise happening. I didn't know a train was going to be passing right now. How would I? I believe they're doing some stuff, working on the road outside on the street, so if that's loud, sorry. But it's just a time for me to record, and I'll maybe talk loud enough, and the game will have some background shit in the back. I might not even notice. Also, this was played on the 3DS, the Virtual Console port of the Game Boy game. Should be fine, but just in case there's any weird inconsistencies or anything, maybe because of that, just so you're aware of my particular version. But I think that's pretty much everything, so let's do it. It's the Mega Man gun. So, Mega Man 4 actually starts off with a bit of an opening thing if you stay on the title screen for a bit. There's a little scene that shows Dr. Wily show up. He sends in these robots into the city. They start causing destruction. You get a nice little animated cutscene thing for that stuff, or a cinematic or whatever. And it gives you a little bit of context for what's going on. It's not a super detailed plot. And then when you hit to start the game, Dr. Light, who in this game is actually referred to by his Japanese name, Dr. Wright. R-I-G-H-T. Apparently that's his name. I looked that up. I thought it was maybe just a weird typo. But no, it just came from that, and they just didn't change it for this, even though he's known as Dr. Light here. I don't know why they didn't bother. He kind of tells you basically the thing of like, oh yeah, Dr. Wily is going to take over the world or whatever, so we gotta stop him. He also talks about how you should collect the P-chips, which is something we'll get to in time here. But that's basically the same, that's basically the plot. Same thing you see in every Mega Man game is Dr. Wily has a bunch of robots to start destroying shit. You're Mega Man, you gotta stop them. Gameplay, pretty similar to the previous game. For a lot of it, you go and you fight, you pick between these 4 different robot masters. They're all from the NES Mega Man 4. You can fight them in any order. They same bosses, but they're all new stages. And then after defeating them, you can fight this all new boss that you fight and almost defeat, but he gets away as part of the story thing, I guess. There's some passwords and cutscenes thrown in there. Then after that, you get a second set of stages with 4 bosses from Mega Man 5. And then you have to do a little bit of an extra thing, but after doing that extra thing and beating those bosses in any order you'd like, you can then go to this final set of stages where you fight that boss again, and then you fight a brand new end boss of Dr. Wily at the very end after going through some stages. And you get some sweet cutscenes in there, and of course passwords, for everything, just in case you need to shut it off and whatnot. It's a Game Boy game. That's, the basic gameplay stuff there is the same. You jump, you shoot, you slide. You got a charge shot, which now has a bit of knockback, but it's a slightly larger shot as well. So there's that. Little change in the mechanics. E-tanks are back. But there are some new tanks, such as the mini E-tanks. Collecting 4 of these will actually turn them into a regular E-tank. There are W-tanks, which will refill the weapon energy or ammo or whatever of whatever weapon you currently have selected. And then there are the S-tanks, which will refill all of your health and all of your weapon ammo. So those are all there. And then, of course, like I said, there are the P-chips, which you can use to get stuff basically you bring them back to Dr. Light's lab. Would you go to either, like, after every stage, they ask you if you want to do a stage select thing, or if you want to go back to the lab. But also, if you're just on the stage select screen at any point, you can just hit select and go to that lab. Also, fun fact, once you beat the first set of bosses, if you hit B, you can switch between the 2 sets of bosses on that screen. Something you don't really tell you, but you can do that. And the select screen is not just a grid, it's a fancier, like, rotating thing that shows a bit of extra detail, like concept art of the stage and stuff. So that's kind of a little thing. But it's basically the same thing, so, it's not, I guess, super new. And these P-chips are these drops that are from enemies that you get, kind of like the health pickups and ammo pickups. But they're P-chips, and basically they're more or less used like currency. But you get them to Dr. Light to build you things in the lab. He can make you extra lives, he can make you E-tanks, he can make you mini E-tanks, he can make you S-tanks, he can make you W-tanks. He can refill your weapon energy because it does not refill... or your ammo, I don't know. Sometimes it's called energy, I usually call it ammo. Sorry, I'm flip-flopping a lot. But, it refills that ammo, or energy, or whatever you want to call it, because it does not refill between rounds, unless you get, you lose all your lives, and like game over and have to continue. Continue or stage select, it'll refill it for you. So you can do it here between those if you've successfully done a stage and want to refill that before going to another one. You can also get the energy balancer, which basically is so that whenever you pick up ammo for just the ammo pickups, it'll automatically refill whatever weapon has the lowest amount of ammo, unless you specifically have a weapon selected, and then it'll just give it to that one like it usually does. I believe that's all the things there. Then there's also a bit of a collection element in this idea where in the first 4 stages there are these letters to spell out beat, and then if you get all of those you'll get the mechanical bird beat, which has an ammo meter to use, but will, when being used, can fly around and hit enemies, for you on its own accord. In the second set of levels you need to collect these 4 letters to spell out Wily. Again, each one is put into each stage, and you need those to unlock the last set of levels, because they're like these locked doors you have to open up with those 4 things. So you have to get those, but the beat parts are optional. Also, the new boss gives you a new weapon, which basically is like a thing you can shoot in 8 directions, and it's like a bomb that explodes, but it shoots in 8 directions, so that's that. And I think that's pretty much all of it that I could say. I think all that, there's that, and I mentioned the cutscene, cinematic stuff, all that stuff. I think, the one other thing too is your Buster. There's an upgrade you can get to your Buster. It's a secret one, which basically you get by dying, and getting 4 game overs in a row and then continuing. And on the 4th continue, you'll see a little scene where Dr. Light, or Right, or whatever, is like, well, we have to upgrade your Buster, and they give you an upgraded Buster, which you still have the knockback, but your shots shoot faster, and your charge shot is larger. This doesn't carry over if you shut the game off and turn it back on, so it's only for as long as the game is on. But that's another little thing that's in there as well. And I now think I maybe covered all the stuff I needed to cover for information. And damn, this game is really good. As far as good stuff, like, I think like some of those like cinematics were some of the coolest shit. Like, I didn't even see stuff like that in the NES games. Like, they were really fucking cool, and like the little bit of like sparing story stuff happening was still kind of nice because it felt like there was at least some semblance of like, hey, there's stuff happening around. so we should maybe try to get this, like we should try to stop these people and, like, do these things. Like, it felt like there was just a little more weight to it, and the art was awesome. Even though it's on the Game Boy, like, it does not feel limited to the Game Boy. Like, it feels like this is actually pretty impressive for what the Game Boy can do. The shop thing is interesting. I think it adds a bit of, like, it's cool that when you go between rounds, it's not like, oh, well, I don't have enough lives, I should just kill myself, you know, and get my lives back, because I'm not going to be able to do it. You can buy more lives to do the next round. You can actually start the round with a bunch of lives if you farm up for that, right? Because then you're like, well, I know this level's super difficult, so I'd like to have a bunch of lives to try it, so I don't have to go back as much. And you can do that, you know, and you have all these E-tanks and stuff, and it lets you kind of do this where it's like, if you stockpile the stuff, like, it just lets you use things more often as well, too. Like, the idea that, like, you get... you get, like, oh, man, I don't want to use these E-tanks because they're limited for, like, I only find so many on the levels, I don't want to waste them or anything, right? But it's like, you can buy them now, so you're like, cool, I'll get those, and, like, I can use those, and I can use my weapons, and I can refill those, and, like, it makes you feel like you're more free to use things and do things, without screwing yourself in the process. It's also a neat way to make it for, like, players who are maybe not as skilled, where it's like, oh yeah, like, you're dying a lot, so you're still getting P-chips, you know, or maybe if you're just sitting around trying to get health back and grinding a spot to get health or ammo from an easy enemy spawn, and it's like, well, you're getting P-chips also in the process, so it's like, you're also getting more stuff, and you just get more resources. But if you're dying a lot, it's like, you're still probably going to be getting some P-chips along the way, either from killing enemies or getting to certain spots in the levels where they show up in those set spots. And it's like, you could use those to basically, like, I don't know, like, it's just, I guess what I'm saying is it's a way for you to have more resources, and it's sort of a way to help cushion the blow of you maybe dying a lot and, like, having to repeat stuff more, is that you'll then have just more of those P-chips to buy more stuff to help you even more so later on. And that's, you know, energy balancer is also a neat little thing. And, like, I don't know, like, the shop idea is pretty interesting, and it's a way to make this game feel like it's a bit more full than it is. It's more of a, you have to dig into it a little more so than just, like, blasting through the entire thing. But because there are E-tanks in the levels and stuff, like, you could still just kind of blast through it like a normal, like, Mega Man fashion. You could still totally do that. I don't know, the music's still good, sound effects are still good, gameplay's still pretty tight. You know, all that stuff that's already was good in the previous ones is still good here. Also that new weapon you get, that's like an 8-way huge bomb explosion thing that doesn't even consume that much ammo every time you use it. That thing's fucking awesome. Plus, there's, like, enough, like, stages, like, to do after that to make it feel like it's worthwhile, and not like in the previous ones where a lot of time you get, like, this cool special weapon and you use it for, like, 1 or 2 stages, or just, like, to fight the last guy, and it's like, that's it. So I really liked that aspect of it. And also really, really like the difficulty of it. I think that it curved really well. It started off easy enough. I mean, you have some of the freedoms of, like, you can select whatever bosses you want, but it's like, you have to beat these 4 bosses before you go on to this harder part, and then these 4 other bosses that are, like, even, like, end stages that are, like, harder yet, before going on to this part that's even harder than those. And, like, it's cool how, like, they kind of give you, like, the freedom as well as the linear structure. Like, they get, like, bits of both of those, and also it's still, like, it feels like it doesn't, like, just kick your ass out of nowhere, but it does get pretty difficult near the ending of those, and it's like, by that point, you're, like, more accustomed to how you can play, and you're more, like, more into experimenting, and you have an idea of what you're supposed to do rather than flailing around, you know, and, like, I think it's done really, really well with the way the difficulty works. So, yeah, like, a lot of stuff about this game I thought was really, really good, but I do have some complaints. Like, that Buster upgrade is fucking stupid, that you have to die to get it. You have to do, like, 4 continues in a row to get it. Maybe they're not necessarily in a row, but I thought they were. When I did it, they had to. And, like, the thing is, it's for people who died a lot. I get it. It's supposed to make it easier for them. I feel like it should maybe be permanent also, but it's a thing where it's, like, it would maybe be better, like, to just have it be part of, like, the lab, so you could go, like, buy it, or build it or whatever, because then it's, like, well, why, like, you know, I forgot to mention I do like those collection elements, or collecting the beat things and the wily things, and the way to just make you kind of explore the stages a bit, and, like, do that stuff. I don't know. Sorry, I forgot that bit there. I'm all over the place today. But, like, maybe that Buster upgrade should have been, like, a thing where you just have to spend a bunch of P-chips on it. So people who don't really, like, use the shop won't necessarily get it, or won't have to get it. And people who, like, are dying more, or going to be getting more P-chips, it'll be easier for them to get that and help them progress more easily. You'll have to grind to get it if you want to get it. It adds a bit of a grindy element, which, it's not something I necessarily want in the game, and that's something that maybe the shop inherently adds that is maybe not that great for Mega Man anyway, but it could have been utilized better in general, just the shop even. Also, the upgrade maybe could take away that knockback. I think that would have been a really nice thing to do, either in addition to or instead of the, increased speed and larger charge shot size, but that's just me. While that does add an interesting bit of, like, you have to be careful because if you shoot this charge shot on an edge, you could knock yourself off. Or if you do it when you're jumping and you need all the momentum of the jump, you could screw yourself during the jump. It adds a bit more of a dynamic to it, I guess, but at the same time, it also kind of fucks you up. Where it's like, it adds too much risk for the reward, and so you usually end up just shooting stuff a bunch of times instead of using your charge shot, because it's safer, and it's better to maybe take a couple hits and not take a couple hits because you didn't kill an enemy right away, rather than just completely die because of, like, you had some kind of knockback with that charge shot. And I don't know, the shop could have done more with that. Why not maybe put the beat parts in there, or like maybe put the rush things in there, because like there's rush coil and rush jet in here. But like maybe put those in the shop so you could get those that way. And like that would be a cool addition. It's like, so then you wouldn't necessarily have to go and like collect the beat parts, because you could buy or like build them through here for people who had trouble collecting them. There are some branching paths in the levels, by the way. I don't know that you necessarily need to take them. I think maybe one or two for like secret, like for those like letters for those things if you want them. And while I like that collection element, like I said, I think that like the branching paths usually are like getting you some kind of extras and like bonus items that are almost riskier to go for, because you risk taking damage and dying along the way. And I think there may be some alternate routes as well, which can be helpful. If one way is too hard for you, you can take the other. But a lot of times it did feel like they were just going to dead ends with like extras like 1-ups and E-tanks and stuff, and then you have to trek back and then backtrack to where you were again. And is it necessarily worth it when you have something like the shop anyway? Also, maybe take out the whole like you don't refill your ammo thing. Just refill it between the levels, take that thing out of the shop. That could be replaced easily, I think. The shop could have been utilized better as that overall point I was making for that, though. I feel like it's really interesting, but maybe could be a bit better. And P-chips are also really fucking annoying to find constantly when you're just looking for extra ammo or health from an easy enemy, like, spawn where you can keep killing them, and you're like, I just want this health, and you have to shoot 7 million of them, and you're like, the P-chips are nice, but I really just want health, and it's another thing to clutter up, the drops of like, well, it's either that or ammo, and either of those is not the health you need, and you're like annoyed, like, I don't know, it's just another thing there, so that can be a little bit of a negative thing sometimes. Also, look, I think the password system is to save all this information, so the password is kind of complex, and I understand that, but holy shit is it frustrating to have it, because it's like this grid, and there's like R's and B's and E's and blanks thrown in there, and it's like kind of like a sloppy mess, and you have to like grid it out on like your paper to like write it down. That was kind of frustrating. I didn't really care for that much, and I don't know. I guess that was a little frustrating. Also, I think I do have to mention that there is of all the Game Boy games, I think this one has the most flickering and slowdown of them all. And there are parts where that can be kind of a problem if you are not used to trying to adjust for something like that. I wouldn't say it makes the game unplayable, but there are certain parts where it's like, alright, there's flickering and all this shit happening here. It's like, I'd really like to just do this part, but I can't, or like I have to like take my time a bit more, change my timing up, because it's like so slow. So it's like flickering and whatnot. So like that's a thing where it's like, it's not terrible, but it's definitely noticeable, and that's one of the few times where you're like, this game, okay, it's a Game Boy game, it can't handle that much stuff happening at once, even though, like, it is trying. Like, bless it for trying. Wow, I hope that background noise hasn't been unbearable this entire time. But, hey, Mega Man 4, overall, this game it's pretty fantastic. All the stuff, like, comes together really, really well. Yeah, maybe it's not the best example of what classic Mega Man is, but that's what kind of makes it great, is that it takes these things that were great about the other Game Boy Mega Man games, plus it has, the nice difficulty curve, it has the interesting new, like, shop mechanic thing, and it puts in enough new stuff where it's actually pretty cool for people who are series veterans, are like, hey, this is a nice, like, twist on Mega Man. It's not just, like, new levels and more of, like, the same stuff with new, like, levels and whatnot. It's actually, like, some new mechanics thrown in there, too, and, like, the cool, like, cutscenes and stuff. Like, it's impressive. It's a really impressive game, and I think that even fans of the NES games would be like, this is pretty fucking cool. So I'd really recommend it. I think it'd probably be worth about, like, $25. It's really good, and I think it brings together a lot of stuff. It has a lot to offer, and it definitely feels like it's the first one that, like I said, this was the first one I played where I was like, not only did I feel like it wasn't, hindered by the hardware, which I don't feel like any of them were, really. It was the first one where I was like, wow, like, this is impressive. This is a Game Boy game, that they could do this much with a Game Boy game, and with Mega Man, and it's great. Without, going too far out of the realm, and it's like, it's really good. I don't know, it's Mega Man with a little extra stuff there that makes it interesting, so if that interests you, definitely check it out. That's Mega Man 4. I don't know what else to say, so I guess we'll just end it off with another really shitty fake, the Mega Man gun thing again. Maybe I'll edit that out.
Mega Man.